seeing this crowd. As CEO and co-founder of Refinery29, my mission and my personal ambition is to obviously build an incredibly disruptive media company, but also a really distinctive brand. And as I'm sure you can imagine, a lot of people ask me, what does disruption look like? What does it look like to build a truly distinctive, memorable brand? Which I'm sure is on many people's minds here in this room. So I want to spend time today, take you through a quick story, background, Refinery29, and share 5 things with you that I think are incredibly important to us as a business, future trends that hopefully are important to you as well. First up, 4 moments that we have in our company seen as really important over the last 30 days, couple months that have happened, that have shown the path of building a next-generation media brand. This is January 20th, 1 day after Donald Trump's inauguration on the streets of Washington, D.C. We took 120 people from our office, artists, influencers, videographers, poets, to D.C., put them on 2 buses, walked the streets of D.C. Here's the interesting thing that happened. We created artwork. You see the sign there that says women. We created artwork, tons of different posters, and let people create their own, downloaded their own posters. And what happened is that thousands of people from Kosovo to London to Sydney to New York to LA printed out the artwork that we had created and marched on the streets of capitals around the world on this momentous day. So the power of brand was really there. Same weekend, a few thousand miles away, in Utah, in Park City, Sundance happens, a really important festival for independent filmmakers. And that same weekend, we won for a documentary that we had made. And for a digital media company that produces a ton of content, like every 30 seconds, to win a documentary film, to us, was a huge occasion, and it also shows our commitment to not just producing lots of short-form content, but producing memorable, culturally relevant moments. A few weeks later, this happens, which is in Hollywood, red carpet. We created a first-ever live streaming event that was broadcasting the Screen Actors Guild Awards, probably the most important red carpet event after the Oscars. Live streaming on Facebook, millions of people tuned in for over 60 minutes, tens of millions of actions, of likes, of comments, and so on. Seeing the power of broadcast translated that moment into Facebook was really powerful. And last but not least, this happened, which is the first ever Fashion Week festival that we created. This was last September in New York. Fashion Week, a really important event, right? But also kind of elitist. Doors are closed to the public. And we said, hey, we should really turn this into a public festival. So over 10,000 people showed up on the first day. Over 15,000 people showed up on the second day, waited in 30-degree weather. And over 1 in 2 people on Instagram witnessed the event that very day. So the power of events, showing up in the real world and really mattering to people, is so important. Oh yeah, and here's the footage, as you can see, aerial footage. So we're a mission-driven company. Refinery29's mission is all about young women and empowering, inspiring, and celebrating young women around the world. And it's the values that matter to us. It's about creativity. It's about individuality. It's about speaking with people, creating a dialogue, not talking at them, which, especially in our industry, when you look at old-school fashion magazines, has always been the case. So creating something that's not about judgment, not about prescription, and really celebrating confidence is absolutely key. So why women? How do we get there? Well, this is probably the most important and most powerful generation of women that has ever existed. By some accounts, 19%, women are 19% more likely to run billion-dollar businesses than men. By the year 2028, according to BCG, 75% of the world's discretionary spending will be controlled by women. And probably most importantly, 1/3 of all businesses globally will be owned and run by women. So for anyone in this room who's a marketer, a brand, or who builds a dialogue and doesn't fully address this generation of women, it's a huge miss, and there's such an opportunity. So I started this company. I'm originally from Cologne. Ich komme ursprünglich aus Köln. I started this company some 10 years ago with 3 friends, 3 co-founders, all very different people, different backgrounds, but with a shared vision of celebrating individuality and creativity. And when you see there on the left-hand side is the very first version of Refinery 29. It was really an experiment. It was all about celebrating small, independent, cool brands in cities around the world that we thought were cool, driving business to them, telling their stories. And it took off, and it took off really quickly. So I think pictures tell 1,000 words, so I have about 180 seconds for you of Refinery 29 footage. Here we go. I think we need sound.
Feels a little bit stronger up here, kind of like a head crosswind. It's a little bit gusty, so maybe I'll be able to get a lull so we can get this off.
There's a bit of a crosswind over here. If it's windy where you're at, obviously, you don't need to jump.
Definitely your call.
Sweater shit out every tear, every lie. Anybody wanna dance with me? Sipping on my rum in the corner still. So we are groove to the morning break. Now we go banana in a sugar shake. Bring the bass up, make a blast a block. Select a gonna feed this with a well-cooked rock. See me, I'm a beam, see me swing. Ting tang and sing me like a sing-a-ling. I'm a twang my body till the problem's gone. Drop rubber juice, make a goddamn strong. See me rocking now, going tribal style. Dance like a chicken flap, tiger wild.
Here's an interesting experiment. If you Google image search the word woman, you see a variety of images that pop up. I see women who are hypersexualized. I see women who are infantilized. I also see a lot of white women laughing into salad bowls. When I Google image search woman plus Refinery 29, the images I see are an amazing array of women being active participants in their lives in a way that is interesting, compelling, and more importantly, actually reflects real life.
When my daughter asks me what I do, I tell her that I talk to women every single day about how to be true to themselves.
This generation is driven by purpose.
She's a woman who's not afraid to go for what she wants.
Doesn't want to be spoken down to, doesn't want some sort of gimmicky bullshit.
Who could possibly like being marketed to by people who don't understand them? They have money and they want to spend it in the right ways, and they look to us to help to guide that path.
When that trust is established, we can drive true, authentic partnerships and conversations.
If you want to talk to this generation of women, you come to Refinery 29.
Facebook, YouTube, Instagram,
Snapchat, Twitter, YouNow.
It's where the user is consuming.
Vine, Periscope, and I think that's it. I think that's it. There's probably more, but that's fine.
We look at data with empathy at the end of the day, and we use that perspective to make stories that resonate with women.
When you partner with Refinery 29, you become part of the voice of this generation.
So this is our world. This is the world of Refinery 29, and here's where we live. We have 30 million people that come to refinery29.com every month, but the important thing is that we have over 500 million that consume content on various different platforms. And it shows the rapid change in the ecosystem and in where distribution is and taking place. So Facebook for a quick break. Instagram is interesting, by the way, because it's beautiful, it's for inspiration. But as a result of what's going on in the political world, we're actually also celebrating tough topics on it. Snapchat, one of the largest publishers for young women on Snapchat, we have 3 to 4 minutes of their time focusing on beauty, focusing on topics that matter. And here's just a quick look at growth. Our growth has happened over the last 10 years, but what we've seen over the last 2 years is astounding. And it's really a result, fundamentally, of mobile and video and the rapid proliferation of content on all platforms. And digital distribution. So on the left-hand side here is a quick documentary that we shot about a woman named Batty Winkle. She is an 80-year-old grandmother and also Instagram star. Her daughter created an Instagram profile of her. We made a documentary, and we make that documentary, run it on Refinery 29, 20 minutes long, but we distribute it uniquely on each platform. We call that sweating an asset. It's really how do you get the most out of every unique part of a piece of content. And as a business, we have set ourselves the goals of really not just disrupting how content is consumed, how you build a business and a distinctive brand that people will remember, but also how do you work with brand partners in ways that go deeper? How do we solve big problems for brands? So in our own company, we've built distinctive services and solutions, from content production to video production to events. We have Fashion Week events, we have music festivals. They're a separate business, to working with influencers around the world, data and insights, and knowing really everything that we can know about our audience, and to create really unique programming, and distributing that programming on channels where you really know everything about your audience, and you're specific and attuned to the uniqueness of each channel. Here's something that we created together with Keds. Keds is probably one of the most important sneaker brands for women. They celebrated their 100-year anniversary last year, their centennial. And together with Keds, we created a campaign that stretched from an event that was significant and happened in New York to working with really incredible stars, from Allison Williams to Ciara, the musician, to social media stars. And we created assets, unique global assets that were distributed online and on billboards around the country. So 5 ways to win with millennial women. 5 things that I want to talk about that are significant in building a dialogue for the future and that I think will matter for anyone in this room. First, have a distinct visual identity. So Google says that by 2020, at least half of all searches are going to be visual and audio-driven searches. And why is this so important? It's so important because we're living in an environment where everybody is consuming our content in channels like the newsfeed. And everything looks the same. So how will someone remember you? Oftentimes, people click through a link, and they go to a story, and they don't even know who the publisher was. They don't even know who the brand was. And how people will remember you is so important. So we're investing in important, dynamic, strong visuals, lots of colors, that even when somebody sees our content out in the wild, they know that it's a distinct piece of content from Refinery 29, or from any one of your brands that's here today. So thinking about your visual identity and how you appear in a digital distributed universe is incredibly important. Stand for something that matters. This is probably one of the most important facts, especially in this moment right now, right? After the election of Donald Trump, I think people have lost their faith in certainly politicians as their heroes. And in some respects, brands and media companies have the ability to replace that role, to really be there and talk about and take a stance on important things. So 91% of young people say that they would actually switch or buy a product from a brand if that brand had a cause that they believed in. Now, that's really difficult. It's really difficult for a lot of brands here to probably feel comfortable embracing a cause or politics or anything. But guess what? At the end of the day, people really want to identify with things that matter. And I often hear that young people hate advertising. Like 50% of them have ad blockers installed on their mobile devices and on desktop computers and everything else. Well, they actually love advertising. They just hate bullshit. They truly hate bullshit. It's about quality, it's about authenticity, and it's about relevance. Here's an example of something that we created called the 67% Project. The 67% Project was our attempt to work together on a campaign actually focused, oh, here it is, the 67% of women in the United States who are plus size, who are size 12 or above, but who are not represented in the mainstream media. It's just supermodels and people that don't show what the real world looks like. So together with Getty Images and the brand Lane Bryant, we created a new photo stock archive. We created an ability for any brand and media company and publisher out there to actually take advantage of images that show real plus-size women and have a long cultural impact on the conversation and to things that really matter. 3, the power of the moment. Events and live streaming. So we all know what live means in digital. We know that live is a huge trend. Twitter bought Periscope. There's a million platforms dedicated to live content. And live content is really special. We have a team of 10 people dedicated to Facebook Live. And even just from Facebook, we see that 10 times more comments appear on Facebook Live videos than on regular ones. Because live content gives you an ability to go behind the scenes. It gives you an ability to really plug in, to have an important conversation that's interesting and be there in the real world. And it's also kind of getting away from the plasticky world that sometimes happens in social media where every image is perfect. And especially young people want to get sort of a feel of like, hey, what is it really like to really engage, to get something closer to something that feels authentic. Life is also about events. I spoke about our event earlier that we had in Brooklyn during Fashion Week, but events matter more than ever. I think one question that any of us in this room have to ask ourselves is, if there was a moment tomorrow where your brand is not there, would people really care? Do people show up in the real world? Do they really, really, really believe in your brand? And experiences matter enormously right now. People want to feel drawn to something that gives them a unique lens to something, a unique ability to participate in a moment and an event. So think about experiences and event as an additional way of engaging, an additional way to bring people to you. From Snapchat to cinema. The point here is that what we found, and especially in our audience, is that people want a diverse mix of content. They want to be able to consume Snapchat content, but they also want to be able to consume cinematic content. And us as a company, we're investing in a ton of different platforms and content that exists on a ton of different platforms. But it's also really important, again, almost going back to the example of events, to strike culturally relevant conversations. So it's not always about reach, and infinite scale, and how big can I get, but it's about, do you make an impact in someone's life? Does someone care? Have you touched important topics? Have you struck important conversations? And that's really important. Influencers. Many here in this room probably work with influencers on some level. I think what we've seen over the last few years in the rise of influencers is enormous. Obviously, the connectivity there, the trust matters enormously. But the work that's going on, and that we see going on with influencers, it's also getting pretty boring. It's pretty generic, right? There's sort of like in your Instagram feed, you see somebody who's promoting a product. So I think, how can you up it a notch? How can you think about creative ways to work with great talent and put them behind the camera? On the right-hand side is an example of a series that we launched called Behind the Headlines. America Ferrara, who is a fantastic actress, became an executive producer of this documentary series called Behind the Headlines that featured the lives of immigrants in America. And on the left-hand side is Kids, which I spoke about earlier. So the ability for you to work with amazing voices, with people with their own communities, but give them creative control, which also means giving up, matters hugely. And especially because 90% of people say they trust a recommendation of a friend above anything else. So I think that the work that has gone into the influencer universe is really important, but it certainly can be done in more interesting, more challenging ways. So I started this company 10 years ago with 4 people. We have 500 now in 4 offices around the world. We're in Berlin. We have an amazing team that is doing incredible, impactful work, touching women every day in important conversations, and equally important conversations with a lot of brand partners. We're at 500 now. We're continuing to grow, investing in video, investing in our global expansion. I encourage anyone who has any entrepreneurial spirit or ambition to follow your dreams, keep on reimagining the ways things are done, and keep building the future. Thank you very much.